Hey church, today we're in Resilient, week number 3, and we're going to talk about fear today. But let's start with the definition of resilience that we're using in the series. Resilience is harnessing difficult emotions to build your faith. Now, if you want a follow-on series from the Pursue God library, check out that anxiety series where we talk quite a bit about anxiety and fear and how to harness it. But for starters, I want to ask, what are you afraid of? Maybe fear of failure or of the unknown or change or pain or loss or rejection or death. And today we're going to talk about King Jehoshaphat, and he was a guy who probably experienced all of these fears when the armies of the Moabites, Ammonites, and some of the Maonites declared war on Jehoshaphat. He was king of Judah at the time. Now, Jehoshaphat was one of the good guys. He was one of the few kings of Judah that was good. It says that he was deeply committed to the ways of the Lord. He removed pagan shrines and Asherah poles. He even instituted social and religious reform, and they took copies of the book of the law of the Lord and traveled around teaching all the people. So he was a good guy, but he still had reason to be afraid, and we're going to see how he handled it. Before we look at the rest of his story, we should probably define fear. We did that in the anxiety series. Fear is an emotion caused by the brain's reaction to situations, not the situations themselves. So that means that fear can be either good, like for example, when you're afraid of a rattlesnake or a bear, you're probably going to appropriately respond to that. But fear can also be bad, and it can also be harnessed for evil. And the question we're asking then in this Resilient series is your fear building or destroying your faith? That's the question I'm going to encourage you to come back to with your small group. But let's look at what happened to Jehoshaphat in his situation. He was terrified by the news, of the armies advancing against him, and he begged the Lord for guidance. He also ordered everyone in Judah to begin fasting, and so the people from all the towns of Judah came to Jerusalem to seek the Lord's help. So from these two verses, here are Jehoshaphat's 3 steps for overcoming fear. Maybe you can apply them in your situation. Number 1, admit you're afraid. I think for especially men, the biggest fear that you have is being afraid. You don't think that fear is a manly thing, but I love that Jehoshaphat recognized it. He wasn't afraid of it. He was willing to put fear on the table and deal with it. Number 2, turn to God. Think about it for you. Where do you turn when you're afraid? Maybe for some of you, God is like the last resort. For Jehoshaphat, God was the first resort. He turned to God and he asked for help. Now, the third thing might be a little bit of a surprise, but it's right there in the Bible, is Jehoshaphat and all the people started a fast. We talk about this in our series called Breakthrough Disciplines, that sometimes there are spiritual disciplines like fasting that we should implement if we're really trying to be serious about overcoming something like fear. If you've never tried it, well, maybe that's something that you can try this week or this month. Now, here's the rest of the story for Jehoshaphat. I love this. It says in verse 12, he cries out, "Oh, our God, won't you stop them? We are powerless against this mighty army that is about to attack us. We do not know what to do, but we're looking to you for help." What a great memory verse if you're trying to overcome some anxiety in your life. And then here's what a prophet said to Jehoshaphat and all the people. He said, "Listen, all you people of Judah and Jerusalem, this is what the Lord says. Do not be afraid. Don't be discouraged by this mighty army, for the battle is not yours, but God's." There's another quotable verse from this story. The prophet was telling Jehoshaphat that basically God was going to fight the battle for them, and that's exactly what happened. At the very moment that Jehoshaphat and his people began to sing and give praise, notice they didn't even have weapons, the Lord caused the armies of Ammon, Moab, and Mount Seir to start fighting among themselves. And so just like the prophet said, they didn't even have to fight the battle. God fought the battle for them. And I love how this whole story ends in verse 26. On the 4th day, all of the people gathered in the Valley of Blessing, which got its name that day because the people praised and thanked the Lord there. It is still called the Valley of Blessing today. For Jehoshaphat and the people of Judah, they turned this valley of anxiety, this place that could have been known as the place of fear, they turned it into the place of blessing. Why? Because they turned to God in their anxiety. They turned to God for his help, rather than trying to deal with it themselves. And that's what it means to be resilient.